of the Outrun. It's a really special movie. I'm David Canfield from Vanity Fair. So excited to talk to the star of this film, Saoirse Ronan, who gives such an extraordinary performance, so please give her a very warm welcome. Hey, Saoirse.
Hiya.
I wanted to start with something you've said about this role, which is that you felt like this was the time in your life to do it, that you couldn't have done it even a few years ago, you said. So why? Why now?
Myself and Jack Loudon had read the book in lockdown, and I think I said that in the intro, that it was like everything had aligned for us to read that piece of literature when we did, to be introduced to such an honest story that also celebrated all of the things that we loved about life when we did. It's a subject that is very, very personal to me. It's an illness that I have felt incredibly angry at most of my life, having been on the receiving end of it, and really been shaped by it, for better or for worse. And I think I had a lot of resentment towards it, and a lot of confusion and frustration, and all of these feelings that I hadn't fully figured out. And I knew that this project, if we could bring it together in the right way, would help me to do that. So I knew there was just going to be this added kind of layer of depth to the work because of my relationship to alcohol.
So when it came to actually playing this character, what did that feel like, given all that? I mean, you said there's this experience of anger that you've had with it, and anger is such a primary emotion with this character, particularly when she's drunk.
I think by the time we got to filming, I had worked through a lot of that. What was really interesting about the prep is that I went to an AA meeting, which I had very kind of conflicted feelings towards, just because I was in a room of people who, at that point, I didn't fully understand, and I was so ready to kind of put my barrier up to them and their stories in a way, even though I knew it was part of my job to sort of absorb whatever I heard and to just be in that space with them. But it was hard for me to do that because I was just quite hurt by what this substance can create, the destruction it can cause and stuff. So that took some time, I think, to work through that. But then to work with the actors and non-actors who are in the rehab group, who are all in recovery themselves, and have them be so unbelievably sort of honest and brave and more in touch with themselves actually than a lot of us are, made me realise that there's an arc to this, there's a story to tell, and there's an evolution to someone who goes through this type of story and suffers from this particular addiction. There's a way forward, and I really wanted to kind of crack that open, humanize it, you know.
So when it came to sculpting this performance, because you have her at so many different parts of her life, so many different time periods, what did that work look like practically, just in terms of figuring out the physicality of when she's drunk, figuring out what it's like when she's alone? Like, how did you sort of differentiate that even in your head?
Yeah, it took some time. I think a lot of it was work that I did on my own. I worked with Jack a lot. It was really helpful to have another actor who actually wasn't part of the cast, but was someone who I really rate and I really respect, and to be able to bounce ideas off of him was really, really helpful, because, you know, we were obviously involved years before we actually shot the film. So the idea of Amy and what then became Rona was percolating for a long time before it became this sort of solid thing. So we had time to really go, what about this? Or like, what if we show something? You know what I've always thought? I've never seen this on screen before. Or, you know, this used to really upset me when this person would do this when they were drunk, whatever. So we had time to build up the image of her that we wanted to kind of create. And then the closer it came to shooting, I worked with Wayne McGregor, who's a movement coach who's worked with like the Royal Ballet and many ballet companies all over the world. And I had met him years before on Mary Queen of Scots, and the way he worked and his sort of approach to finding the character was just this very sort of revelatory moment for me, and it really helped me to you know, not only find the physicality of a character, but just really embody who they were and not make it so kind of heady in a way. It felt like they were in my bones after I'd worked with him. So I really wanted to take the sort of loose drunk scenes that we were going to have in the picture and make a distinction from one to the next. And we did that through her state of mind, where she was at in her life at that point. Emotionally, we would just sort of decide, okay, well, this is where she's at, and how does that manifest in her physicality. So that was the most kind of like specific prep that I did beforehand.
And when it came to shooting on the day, you did a lot of improv, is that right?
Yeah, we did a lot of improv, which I was really nervous about because I've only done that a handful of times, and it's kind of my pet peeve when I see in movies, you know, filmmakers being like, we'll just improvise it and we'll just like just see how it feels on the day. And I'm always like, let's make a decision. How about that? Am I right? but I think the quality that it sort of brings about can actually be really appropriate for certain projects and certain pieces of material. And I think it really worked in this case because you are sort of watching a character who's in free fall, and everything is sort of a bit disconnected and you don't quite know where you are at points. And I think what we were very aware of is that even though there have been so many movies that have come out and you know, pieces of film TV that have come out about addiction that are great, they can really sort of lean into like, okay, now I'm going to deliver my monologue about how this feels and what, you know, and it can edge it towards sort of being a bit indulgent, and we really didn't want to lean into that. We really wanted it to feel as close to reality as possible, and our way into that was through improvisation. So but I did voice those concerns to Nora, and she was very patient with me, and she was like, okay, you and I will sit down and we'll sort of flesh out that dialogue. And at least I was able to sort of self-edit then as we went along.
When I think about improv in a movie like this too, a lot of it I would imagine is pretty quiet work, because we're just watching you at times, and you have to communicate a lot, but maybe there was a freedom in being able to do that without kind of a strict guideline.
Yeah, I think there is. And actually on that, one of the things that I said to Nora, and I really wanted to convey this to the rest of the cast as well, is that I didn't want the other actors or myself to feel that just because we were expected to kind of come up with some of the dialogue on the day, that we would fall into that trap of like over explaining things or over talking, which happens I think a lot when you improvise too, if you're not a comedian and you're not like just brilliant with this sort of stuff. So I really didn't want us to fall into that trap either, and really find the quiet when we needed it, because usually, especially I think in film, that is our most powerful tool, is those moments when nothing is being said at all. And yes, and so often we're watching this character in a very sort of isolated state, whether she's in London and she's, you know, conducting the canal, or she's in a relationship and it's incredibly lonely, or she's on Pape and she has nobody. There's sort of different shapes that isolation takes, I think, throughout the film. And that seems to be something that I have been very drawn to my whole life. And I guess the older I'm getting, the more clear I am on who I am. the more I realise that like that is my sanctuary, is finding quiet when I can, and then I just think that makes the moments of connection that she has with people and with community all the more powerful and so precious, you know, because it's really taken a lot for her to step outside that front door of Rose Cottage and go down to the Muckle Supper and, you know, actually interact with people. Like we wanted to really you know, give time over to the anxious person out there, where it's like a huge feat for them to just step outside the door and make contact with someone else, and that's a huge part of Rona's character. So.
I think that the landscape says a lot too. I read the book Amy that this is based on after seeing the film, and I was struck by the way she writes about the landscape kind of in tandem with herself in that case, with the character. When you read the book, what did you gain from the way she brought that world to life? Because it is kind of intrinsic to the character you play.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the landscape is sort of like a metaphor for her interior world and her state, her emotional state. And that was very clear from the writing in the book. I think that coming from Ireland, yes, but also now sort of seeing Scotland as my second home, the relationship to the land is such a fundamental part of the people and how they understand themselves. Actually, as I think it is everywhere, if you really reconnect with where you come from. And so I knew that was something that sort of needed to be celebrated, I suppose. So we always wanted that to be a huge part of the film. And yeah, it was just always like our driving force to immerse ourselves in the land as much as possible.
Can you share some of the activities you partook in that immersion, like landing and things like that? I know.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've just saying that I delivered a lamb. I delivered 7 lambs, actually, which you don't see in the picture. But I did it all by myself, and it was very messy. And also we were just out of COVID, so we were like, where's the anti-bac as soon as it was done? Do you know what anti-bac is? Like, what do you call that, hand sanitizer? Yeah. Anyway, so yes, that was one of the activities that I partook in, which was a very new experience for me, and actually like really, really terrifying, because as you see, when the lamb comes out, they're sort of lifeless looking, so you assume that you've just killed this lamb before it's even like stepped foot into the world. But that was an incredible experience, and that was a really great insight just into Amy's childhood and sort of what's expected of kids who grow up on a farm, and the discipline that's needed and the dedication that their parents have to the land, and how that sort of comes before anything else. And you know, that was all really invaluable to me in the months leading up to us actually starting the shoot. Why do I keep saying picture? I don't know why. I think because I'm like in Hollywood, I want to
that's
like
the word
more
of the day.
I don't know why I keep saying that. And what else did I do? I mean, the cold water swimming was something that I love anyway. And that was probably the most sort of acting that I had to do was to pretend that the water was actually really cold, and I was very uncomfortable stepping into it when actually I really love it. So yeah, there was kind of amazing, unexpected moments, like the seals singing back to me. That obviously wasn't planned because they're seals, and you know, it was just a beautiful marriage between a bunch of random people who love making films and the natural world that have no idea what you're doing and don't really care, but they're curious about you, and they'll let you come into their home for a little while. And you know, there was something really beautiful and simple about it. And I was actually I was saying to someone earlier while you guys were watching the film that it was such a relief actually in this modern world to be able to go to a place like Pape for 4 weeks and just give over to a simpler life and let that kind of be the way you were going to live for a few weeks. Like the shop opened twice a week from 2 to 4, and that was fine. But it was fine. Like, we've all become so used to like having everything at our fingertips at all times, and it's amazing how you just kind of go, okay, I can't do that right now, and that's okay. And that just really calmed us all down and made us incredibly present and very focused. It was wonderful.
That's lovely. To go back to what you were saying about some tropes, traps of addiction films, I was really struck by the structure of this movie. It's almost like a collage and very nonlinear. And I found that really effective to kind of subvert that and avoid that. Can you talk a little bit about both the filming of it along those lines and just how you approached it in a macro way, knowing that's how the story would be told?
You know, we didn't necessarily know that that's how it was going to be told. I think we were
That's what was in our headphones.
Yeah, that was new. See, unexpected, and that's okay. We were leaving ourselves open to wherever the process kind of took us. I think our connection to the material that we all had was the thing that kind of kept us motivated. But Nora our director, was incredibly trusting of, shaping it as she saw fit as we went along, and that was really beautiful, actually. So it wasn't until we got into the edit, and we had so many different versions of this film that we tried out. There was so much that we could have showed that's not in the movie. There's so many other versions of it that we could have told, so many different relationship dynamics that could have been in it. But actually the way it came together, I think, has been so perfect to reflect the original material, which, as you say, is non-linear and deconstructed almost in the way it would be for anyone in life, actually, even if they're not struggling with addiction. But like, life is sort of all over the place, and you have moments that you sort of float through and other moments that you feel very present in, and then you'll look back at something and go, oh my God, all of this time has passed. And I actually think really brilliantly Nora has found a way to make a movie that reflects the journey of life for anyone. But we were really relying on instinct and our kind of fundamental understanding of the story to get us there, I suppose. When we made the film, we knew what elements of the story we wanted to bring out. We knew what feelings we wanted to sort of evoke, and I think we were very sort of present in the moment, and we knew that, like, from scene to scene, what we were creating was very true and authentic. But then piecing it together afterwards was like a whole other stage of that journey, because, as I said, we could have gone in this direction or this direction, but I think where it's ended up has been so perfect for the picture.
Picture.
The picture.
Am I right, this is your first producing credit?
Yeah.
That's
why I'm still calling it a picture.
There you go. Yeah. The reason I bring it up is you've been in this industry since you were a child. I've never seen you give a performance like this. It's really powerful and really, I think, different from what you've done in the past. And then you're also working behind the scenes from inception to get this off the ground. Do you see those two things as linked at all? Like, giving a really different kind of performance and being involved in that in a way that you hadn't before after working in this industry for so long?
Yes, absolutely. I think that I was at the point in my life and my career where I'd enjoyed acting so much, and I still do, but I've learned so much over the last 20 years, and I don't feel like I know everything, which says to me that I have quite a bit of experience. And I think the more experience you get, the more you realise you don't know. But you can be honest about that, and you can be a good sort of co-worker, a good sort of team player. And I just wanted to be a part of shaping something that I really cared about and be a part of the bigger idea, to have the opportunity to shape a character that I was going to put so much time and energy into just makes sense. It just makes sense when you get to a certain point in your life where you're like, no, I mean, I'm not completely clueless about this now. I don't know it all, but like I know enough to know what I need to be the best I can be. Or I know who to surround myself with who will push me when they think I can be better. And that's a really empowering feeling. And that's definitely stayed with me since making the film.
Did you feel yourself making different kinds of choices as an actor than you usually do? Like, how did that manifest when you were in front of the camera?
I think I had more of an eye on the overall story than I usually do. I'm still very much one of those actors who's like in the moment, focusing on just one scene at a time. But I think because I'd been a part of so many meetings in the lead up to the film and was working with creative teams in such an intimate way, I guess there was just a knowledge that I had about the piece, the story that we were trying to tell, that I felt so connected to it. I think sometimes as an actor you can have those moments where you're very much in it and you're very invested, but you can also, you know, there are times where you're going to tap out and someone else is going to take over, or like the grown-ups are going to sort out the mess over there. And to know that that was down to you to do that weirdly kept me more focused on the job at hand. It kind of reminds me of how, like, when parents speak about when they have a kid and they're like, my use of time I've become so much more economical and specific in how I use my time, and you know, I can't get tired, so I've got to use my time and my energy wisely, and it sort of feels a little bit like that, you know. You're always focused on something, you're always very alert. And I think I needed to be more stimulated. I was starting to kind of I needed more. I've always loved acting and I still do, but I needed to get more from the experience of filmmaking, and this really helped with that.
There's one word I would use to describe this movie. It's very alive. I think that shows in what you're talking about. Saoirse Ronan, thank you so much. Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you.